On November 17, 1978, a 2-hour special aired on CBS that was watched by millions. It was based on the most successful film of all time and even included its original cast. Other celebrity entertainers also appeared as special guests, including TV, movie, and even rock stars. Yet, this special aired only once and has never been repeated in the decades that followed. What's more, the program has never been officially released. No Super 8, no Betamax, no VHS, no CED, no Laserdisc, no DVD, no Blu-ray, no streaming, you get the point. In fact, the man whose name is on it would prefer it to stay buried deep beneath the sands of time. Of course, this infamous program is the Star Wars Holiday Special, and that description does not even begin to accurately describe it. What it was a bizarre yet thoroughly 1970s mishmash of skits and songs consisting of studio-filmed videotape segments, film clips, musical numbers, a cross-dressing Harvey Korman, and even an animated sequence. The special confused even its most sober viewers on the night that it aired. When the credits rolled, most people were left asking what they had just watched and what these frizzies were. Over the years, I've come to realize there are two kinds of people in the world. Those who know that the holiday special is awful, and those who know it's awful and enjoy it because of this. Both groups know what the best part is. Ironically, for all of its infamy, its genesis was quite impressive. Suggested by CBS, plotted initially by Lucas, with design work by Joe Johnston and Ralph McQuarrie, and costumes by legends like Stan Winston, Bob Mackie, and Rick Baker. It would seem there was no way that the project could fail. Unfortunately, this endeavor, flush with writers and multiple producers, had schizophrenia from the start. The original director resigned after a troubled first 3 days, and with Lucas busy on other projects, the special slowly morphed into something else entirely. In fairness, it should be pointed out that, while Lucas has made his share of mistakes, this special really doesn't deserve, completely, to be on that list. The idea of a TV special was a timely idea, and it would have kept Star Wars in the public's minds while the sequel was being prepared. Concept art from the artists mentioned above was promising. Lucas brought the initial story he wanted to tell about Chewbacca coming home for Life Day, and he wasn't as interested in what would fill the spaces in the special, which got longer as production moved forward. Unfortunately, singing and dancing, comedy/variety shows were all the rage during this time period. It was a recipe for trouble. Fans have never been sure of how involved Lucas actually was, as over the years he has downplayed his involvement with the show greatly. The truth is, the writers were able to spend a full 12-hour day with him right off the bat, asking questions about Wookiee life and lore, but afterwards, his involvement was limited to visits here and there when he could spare it. One of his contributions was a helmet that would allow Wookiees to watch different scenes in their minds, which he thought might serve as a device to allow the show to change segments. So, can we blame George for Wookiee pornography? Well, indirectly. Leonard Rips, one of the writers, said it best. I think he wanted to make a sweet and sentimental vision of a holiday season, and I think it evolved into something maudlin, which was not what I thought his vision was. Either way, it was a lesson to Lucas about what happens when you do not have complete creative control, and he would remember this going forward. While all of this is a long and convoluted story, only one segment concerns us here for our purposes, the return to the Mos Eisley Cantina. Whether this cantina is our cantina, though, is open to debate. Using many of the original masks from the film, along with a few new ones created by Ellis Berman and assisted by Rick Baker, the segment attempts to recreate one of the film's most popular scenes, which by this time was finally beginning to get its due. This appearance of the cantina would not exactly be a dimly lit, shadowy den of menace. Because of the use of videotape and studio lights, it would instead look like the set of a 1970s sitcom or an electric company skit, with the lights a little lower. What's more, the star of Maude was hired to play the bartender. Clearly, the producers felt this was a recipe for comedy gold. The entire scene took nearly 24 straight hours to film, commencing August 23, 1978, and soon after it had wrapped, the director, David Akamba, quit and had to be replaced. Mask-related problems, similar to those when first filming the Cantina Band, were much more widespread this time because of the long and gruelingly hot shoot. In fact, actors were dropping like flies and actually had to be given oxygen by an EMT. One of the writers, Pat Proft, brought his young son, who was a fan of the film, to watch the scene being shot. Some of them were passing out because they didn't have oxygen, and there's my son watching these creatures he loves die in front of him. The real plot, if it can be called that, of the holiday special concerns Chewbacca and his family, and the cantina seemed like a far jump from scenes on Kashyyyk, or as Art Carney says, Kazook. So the writers of the show came up with an idea, although it made little sense. While Imperial troops are searching Chewbacca's treehouse, the large viewing screen in the living room activates, informing all Imperial personnel that the following film is required viewing. Apparently, the Empire likes to screw around with their employees and require them to watch surprise videos from time to time, which must have been extremely inconvenient when you were in the middle of a gunfight or raping and pillaging. The other side of this is, if you found yourself besieged by Imperial troops and one of these pop-up videos began, it would be an excellent time to escape. What makes even less sense is that the video is entitled Life on Tatooine and begins with some Star Wars film clips, including the unused scene of the Flash Gordon midget, Rykar Ridgerd, running into an alley and encountering a giant pair of bird-like legs. Then suddenly the scene changes to a supposedly live feed inside the cantina. Whether customers know that they are being filmed and broadcast to the farthest edge of the galaxy is anyone's guess. What the purpose is of broadcasting this to the farthest edge of the galaxy, and what makes it, quote, required viewing, are also anyone's guess. The bartender we are familiar with is not around. This new one is named Akmina. She goes around like a hostess, pouring drinks and mingling with the bizarre array of alien customers. Eventually, a guy called Krellman comes in, played by Harvey Korman, who obviously lost a bet with his agent because he plays 3 roles in the holiday special. Krellman is a weird humanoid alien who has a crater on the top of his head. He can actually pour drinks into it, because apparently they get to his brain faster that way. Right about this time, a message comes on the view screen, which makes this a video within a video. Are you following this? This meta message says that Tatooine is being put under a curfew by the Empire, and everyone has to go home. How the Empire is going to enforce this, we have no idea. The mood of the cantina becomes dour and unruly. Akmina asks all her customers to go home, but they refuse. Suddenly, she has an idea and begins singing and dancing. Now they all head for the hills, except Harvey Krellman. The wretched song she sings was written by TV veterans Ken and Mitzi Welch, and is entitled Good Night But Not Goodbye. You can look up the lyrics online, but they are so bad, Figrin Dan was going by the alias of Barbarine at that time. It goes on for about 17 minutes and actually includes a conga line of aliens exiting the bar. Upon showing B. Arthur the song for the first time, said Ken Welch, we played the song and she just cried. When we watch the finished product, friends, it's our turn. Several original masks from the movie were used for the scene. Writer Bruce Vilanch said that they were supposed to go to the Lucasfilm warehouse and select remainder aliens, but clearly more were required for the scene. We will divide this crowd into 2 groups. Costumes that were in the original Star Wars Cantina, although they are not always the same character, and costumes created specifically for the holiday special. After being ignored for decades, this group shot appeared in Star Wars Insider number 144 in 2013, and finally assigned names to some of the unknowns. Arliel Schaus. Rick Baker's 1974 mask with the light-up eyes was reused here, but this time with completely different clothes. At least in Star Wars, some alien species own different outfits. The modal nodes. It has finally been established that this band was that band, although we all knew it. An article on the official website said this smaller version of the band is made up of the following, and points out that some of the instruments shown are different than what we see in the film. No kidding. Bloodlow, aka Ludlow, the brother of Greedo. If you keep a sharp eye out, you will see that photos of this character are sometimes used to represent Greedo himself. The Star Wars Holiday Special website points out that, being one of the named aliens in the show, the script indeed spells his name out as Bloodlow. Wikipedia tells an interesting story. In 1978, a publicity campaign launched by Lucasfilm used actors dressed as the new character Boba Fett, who put up actual wanted posters in department stores, as shown here, where Greedo's brother is called Ludlow. Deneb Both, formerly Amerha. This character was going to be given the unused name from the 1978 Lucasfilm memo of Amerha. In 2001, Decipher published a game card and named the character Deneb Both, and that name has become accepted. In the TV special, the same hammerhead puppet and arms were used with a brand new robe. Psyside. This alien is said to be a different Abyssin than Mayo, and hair was obviously added to the mask since the film was completed. Compare it here to the original mask. The eye could now sort of open and close, but is mostly closed for the time that we see him, when he is thrown out of the cantina after pulling a knife on the Wolfman, Arlael Schaus. Hem Dazon. This is said to be the exact same Arcona that we see in the film, and he is also presented in a similar way, meaning we only briefly see his head dancing through the frame. Apparently an extra was wearing the mask on his or her head. The Duros. These are supposed to be the same pair of aliens as in the original film, but as we discussed in Chapter 6, there had been a concerted effort to change their names, again, for no good reason. They wear different clothes than in the film, and now both of them finally have alien hands, meaning one Duros has experienced a biological change since we last saw them. Drayton. Another unique Godel. This one also wears different clothes than the others we have seen, and looks more brown in tone than the Godel mask used for the film, so perhaps it was altered. An article on the official site once suggested that there was an often missed second Godel in the scene, but there is never more than one at any given time on screen. Trinto Duaba. This too is the same alien from the original cantina scene. He is once again in the background and comes into the cantina with Labria. His brown cloak is different, but not too far from what he wore in the film. Labria. And speaking of Labria, he comes into the cantina after the Empire's curfew and actually pulls a gun on B. Arthur, so that's something, I guess. The problem with this alien is, there's just not a good way to use this mask, other than a brief cutaway shot, because no matter what you do, it's grinning all the time. Pons Limbic. Here's another original Cantina customer that is not only the same character, but also wearing the exact same clothes as the last time we saw him. The beauty of this is, if you have the action figure, he is ready for your holiday special Cantina diorama. If the institution you reside in allows you to use sharp things to actually make a holiday special diorama. Caldera Rigum, formerly Quatrain. We don't get a very good look at him, but this is the Muftak costume with the giant tan vest added, and probably pants? This is the second holiday special character we have seen so far that Decipher incorporated into their Star Wars customizable card game. They also named the alien, which is an anagram of the name of a Decipher employee, Michael Gerard. Bom Vimden. This is also the same alien we see in the original Cantina, but he is now wearing a leather vest that originated from Planet of the Apes. Interestingly, there also appears to be a second Advisay alien in this scene, which we will cover in a moment. Salamahal. As we talked about in Chapter 5, this is a separate alien and was not present in the original Cantina. You will note that this photo was taken between rounds of filming because the actor has no gloves and is also holding a straw, which was inserted into the mask to help the actor breathe during breaks. Yamnos. Here is another case where an original mask was used but ended up being a different character. The clothes are also completely different from the film. This alien can only briefly be seen in the show, but he is sitting in one of the two alcoves with the Ket Malice alien. Teak Sidbam. It's not Walrus Man, but he does wear the same orange jacket in a short sleeve version with the frayed shirt underneath. He also has the flipper hands that are correct to the species. He looks deep in thought here, but actually does quite a bit of dancing around in the show, where he was played by Rick Wagner. Akmina. And then there was the other bartender. While this bartender is much more chummy with her clientele, she is still not above some tough love when it is required. She carries no weapons because, after all, she has her singing voice. Also, no matter what time it is or what is going on, she is continuously making that face. Cameraman Larry Hyder said that Arthur was, quote, cold and demanding on set. She was pretty much Maud. Socio Cacra. Until the Star Wars Insider feature, this small, white-faced humanoid did not have a name. She utters no sound in the special, but it is clear that she is a helper to Ackmena and goes around polishing the bar and bringing her things. Kelbo. It was conveniently decided, after the fact, that this alien is a Southern Nikto because of his passing resemblance to the Return of the Jedi aliens, which of course were not even created when the special first aired. Krellman. This amounts to 1/3 of Harvey Korman's contribution to the Star Wars Holiday Special. Named the biggest loser of the Holiday Special by this author, Korman was hilarious on The Carol Burnett Show and in Mel Brooks movies, but he just doesn't have any material to work with here. Maybe Tim Conway as another alien would have helped. His lovesick pandering to Ackmena, even grabbing her at one point, is unnerving, and after all, she needs him like a hole in the head. See what I did there? Ket Malice. This is a weird one, because a great portion of the costume budget obviously went into this new alien's design. He even has lobster claws, but you can't even see him clearly in the actual show. When Decipher made their Star Wars card game, they called him a Deshade, and sneakily photoshopped him into the original Cantina, fooling a lot of people at the time. Call Nern. This is another tricky one. This author does not agree that there are 2 Godels in the Holiday Special Cantina, but apparently there are 2 Advocé aliens. This second one sits in an alcove with Rungs, the giant mouse. Bom Vimden sits at a table in the middle of the room. There is one very brief wide shot of the barroom floor where you can just barely see the 2 of them at the same time. Probably. It looks like you can see the front of Nern's head leaning forward, but even the best copies of the Holiday Special have 1978 videotape levels of clarity. Nern wears the studded vest that Bom Vimden wore in the film, and it appears that his eyes are redder. This could have been done to differentiate the 2. Feasibly, if Baker or Lucasfilm had retained the original mold, it wouldn't be that difficult to produce another copy of the mask for the show. It would help if we had a really good group shot that showed the 2 of them together, or if we only knew where the masks were now. Mir Rowe, formerly Lion Man. This one is so lame, I would be willing to bet my complete set of vintage Star Wars figures that Rick Baker had nothing to do with it. Or Baboon Man, who's coming up later, for that matter. Of course, this is just filler for the room, and we all know that, but still, come on. Graven Reub. Or, more appropriately, Nightmare Fu'ul. You can actually see this terrifying thing at a couple of brief points in the segment. It has been decided that it is an E-Bith, a mutated strain of Bith, and like a lot of fiction, this has roots in the truth. An article on the official site mentioned that Rick Baker made several variations from the original Cantina band member mold, and that our horrifying friend here was actually one of those. What's more, a photo from Famous Monsters number 159 from 1979 showed the mask, along with the Muftak suit and the Brainiac mask in the home studio of Rick Baker. Let's hope we never see it again. Rungs, Tintin Dwarf. We have talked about him at various points so far, but this guy finally gets his big scene and his chance to become official. In fact, a few years later, in 1981, when the Star Wars radio drama was produced, Luke specifically names a Tintin Dwarf as being present in the cantina. During Ackmena's terrible song, she even cuddles up to the creature, sits in his booth, and gives him a loving side hug. Thorpe. This is said to be a copy of the Jaspera mask we looked at in Chapter 6, just flesh-colored instead of painted black. And that's certainly what it appears to be, which is extremely lazy. I mean, an expedient use of resources to maximize budgetary limitations. Torque. I suppose the cantina gets extra rowdy at night because not only does Ackmena get an assistant, she gets a bouncer too. I guess you could say he was necessary to the story, but we are really in Croft Super Show territory here. Saban Vikan, formerly Baboon Man. How would you like to get a very exciting call from your agent telling you that you have a role in an upcoming Star Wars TV special, and then the very next sentence is, you have to be something called Baboon Man? Poor guy, you can even see it on his face. And speaking of his face, his crew nickname makes absolutely no sense. Since when are baboons olive green? Zutmore, later Zutton. As we have said, one of the original Snaggletooth masks was rebuilt into this one. If you compare the 2 designs, you can see that many changes were made. The eyes are different, the mouth is open, the ears are no longer large and sticking out, and of course, the hair is totally new as well. We've already discussed how Zutmore's photo was used by Kenner when they made the red Snaggletooth figure, making it unclear exactly who the figure was supposed to be. In 2001, this friendly-looking guy was a natural choice for Hasbro to make into the first official action figure from the Star Wars Holiday Special. Unfortunately, they used the name Zutton, which Decipher had invented for their card game to refer to one of the two Cantina Snivians. Zutmore is the actual name that is spelled out in the Holiday Special script. So it's all kind of a mess. Personally, I've had a love-hate relationship with the Holiday Special. Ever since, as a tiny child, I became upset when the Imperials ripped the head off of Lumpy Stuffed Bantha, and I missed the whole middle of the show. I love the uninhibited 70s-ness of it all, and I can recommend watching it with the Riff Tracks commentary, but let's be honest, it did some damage. Also, somehow I got through this entire video without resorting to any Golden Girls jokes whatsoever, so you're welcome. In a bizarre twist that only the 2020s can provide, you can actually watch the animated segment, The Faithful Wookiee, in excellent quality on the Plus streaming platform, and this brings up a good point. Writer Bruce Valanche remembers George Lucas telling the Holiday Special production team that he had, quote, 10 stories written. There were to be 6 movies. Note, no matter what he said, these movies were not written yet, leaving 4 other stories that he wanted to produce in a different way, one of them being Boba Fett's debut. So, knowing what we know, that gives us 1 through 6, the complete Star Wars saga, 7, Splinter of the Mind's Eye, 8, Chewbacca returning home for Life Day, 9, the story of the Faithful Wookiee, and my parting thought for you is, what in the world was the 10th story? Sure, it could be normal Lucas hyperbole. After all, at one point there were going to be 9 or even 12 movies, but if anyone has any idea, I would love to hear it. Otherwise,
the world may never know.
Next time, we begin an in-depth look at vintage appearances of the Mos Eisley Cantina in other media, such as comics, television, and much more. Among the sights you will see in this chapter are a hut with 1 tea, a Bith in a bed sheet, and Muftak completely drunk. Wait, what?